cranking. That sucker is so loud. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We are back to work on the Brutale. So I may have acquired some OZ Racing wheels. These are forged magnesium wheels. They are off a bike that burnt down to the ground, more specifically a Ducati V4S. Hypothetically, would these forged magnesium wheels work on my burnt Brutale? Let's find out. Unfortunately, it does not work. I had no idea if Ducati hubs and MV Agusta hubs were similar, and they are not. But man, this Brutale with that blacked out rear wheel, oh, that looks so good. The hub and the rear nut look to be the exact same from MV to Ducati, but the backing plate on the back of this OZ wheel is different than what MV uses for their hubs. There are multiple holes on the back of this wheel, and they're spaced out a little bit wider than where MV mounts. Now, the front wheel is a completely different story. Instead of untorquing everything that we just did, I decided to break out the digital caliper and measure from the outside of the left rotor to the outside of the right rotor. And on the MV, it's 131.5 millimeters from rotor to rotor. Now on the Ducati, it is 150.7 millimeters across from the left rotor to the right rotor. So the Ducati front end forks actually sit wider than the MV Agusta forks because those rotors are farther out. Now we know the difference. Going to reinstall the valve into the valve stem. Boom. Man, this is such a nice tool. OZ Racing cap going on. There we go. Now we've got a box from NRC. It's the turn signal kit for this Brutale. Let's open it up and install it. we just wired in our brake pressure switch sensor from the master cylinder. Anytime you activate the brake, it activates this sensor box underneath it, which in turn activates the brake lights. Now, since this is an aftermarket master cylinder, a 17 RCS Brembo, the connection they gave me for it were these things, which are not my favorite. So I grabbed 2 extra connectors from my wire harness bin, which comes in clutch, and we spliced them into the main harness and the brake switch sensor. And now we'll be able to throw this back in the wiring harness bin and use it if we need it on something else. Boop. Now, I'm not 100% sure on the wiring, but if we're wrong, we'll just switch these leads around and we should be right. 50-50 shot. Since it was a gray and brown coming from the switch and a green red coming from the main harness. We've got a special package to open. I believe this is from you guys, and I think it's a t-shirt. Let's open it up. Oh yeah, look at that. It's Dainese Orange County t-shirt. I love these shirts, man. As you can tell, I am a Dainese fan, especially the gloves. You know who you are? Thank you. Well. Is it time for a Super Street DID 520 gold chain? I think so. Our master link on our brand new gold DID chain is installed. The chain was initially too long even with the hub adjusted all the way back, and we were using this Öhlins hub adjustment tool to slot it in right behind the wheel, and then you crank on it to move the whole hub slightly back or slightly forward. But because it was too long, we had to remove one link, which was really easy with the Motion Pro tool. We pressed out the pin to remove one link, and now the chain is a perfect size for this bike with a lot of adjustment room, and then we mushroomed the edges of the master link with this little knob right here. Now the chain will not break unless we have to cut it off. Hopefully you guys are able to do this now with your bike and save yourself some money instead of taking it to a local dealer to get a new chain. Well, I am by no means a titanium professional, but man, I think we did a pretty good job recovering this aero exhaust that's completely titanium. We went through about 11 320 grits along with some flap discs, red and gray Scotch-Brite with some WD-40, because this exhaust had some serious spot damage. When the bike was initially wrecked, it was laying down on the exhaust side and the Öhlins fluid reservoir for the rear shock exploded. I think that's what caused all of the terrible spots on this titanium exhaust. I had to use some pretty heavy grit just to get into those spots and get them removed. I am happy with the results and I'm super excited to see what color this titanium turns out to be. Wow, that exhaust on the Brutale looks so good. It 1000% completes this side of the bike. I can't wait for that to turn nice and blue or purple. We have the BANK AP3000 on the battery right now because it was originally at 8 volts. Right now we're testing the turn signals in the front and in the rear, and I could not be happier. We have a straight 13 volts coming from this bank right now, so we're just testing out everything. Like the horn. I don't think the high beams work unless we actually turn it on, because right now all I can see is just the DRLs. Front lift control, trip record, mileage, inertia. So the reason why this is way off, lean angle 160 degrees and 16.4 Gs. We are missing our tip over sensor or lean sensor. Got our traction control set at 3, ABS at S, which is sport I assume. Our current 2 faults are for the IMU and the SCU, which I assume is suspension control unit because it's showing the forks and the rear shock in red. Good news, our hazards work in the front and in the rear, along with the license plate light, which is working perfectly. I am so ready to hear this thing fire up for the very first time, but we are missing our tip over sensor, which sits right in here on a bracket. So for now, we're going to finish installing the tank, and that means installing a drainage line like you guys recommended in one of the previous videos that I had capped off. For now, we're going to leave the evap system capped off. Let's test our brake sensor that we just wired in. Nice. All right, let's see if we can get this thing to start. tank is now bolted to the frame, all 3 spots. Fuel level sensor is connected, along with the fuel line is connected now to the tank, and the fuel pump is plugged in. We have our overflow just hanging off on the side here. Now, one of you guys let me know, the third sensor that we plugged in recently is actually for air vacuum pressure. So we connected a hose to it, and then that hose connects directly to the throttle body. It's for air pressure and idling, I believe. Well, it's late here. Tomorrow morning, we're gonna go grab some gas, and it's go time. Fresh 91 in the gas tank, and we have proper battery voltage on our battery in the rear for cranking. 2 things that are super important to mention. Evolution Bike has programmed this race ECU to run on 91 USA fuel instead of what it's previously programmed to run on, which is petrol from overseas. That is crucial so that we do not mess up the engine at all. And second, we do not have our tip over sensor just yet. So like you saw on the dash earlier, the bike is still leaned over according to the dash. Let's give it a crank. There's the fuel pump. Let's prime it again. Oh, my dash isn't plugged in. One sec. No fuel leaks. All right, cranking. Oh, it's close. It wants it. We're so close. We did it, guys. It starts. Okay, we are steaming up the shop. Something is burning off up here. No coolant, but we're gonna run it again. Sucker is so loud. My goodness, look at that. That means we rebuilt the top end correctly, or else it would not be running like this. Man, it sounds good. We even have our headlight working. You can see when I switch it, high beam, low beam, and then the flasher. That looks so good. Had to step outside. It smells horrible in there, but it's also like 1 degree out here. The exhaust is a little bit warm. It is showing just our 2 faults from previous suspension control unit, which we don't have the harness for, so we haven't plugged it in yet, and the IMU, which I'm not sure what that is. I totally thought you could not start a bike if it was reading that it was completely leaned over. No leaks from the fuel tank to the rails to the injectors, which is good. We're gonna top off the oil, get it perfectly even, and continue working on the Brutale. It doesn't feel real. We have acquired some rear sets for this Brutale. Right side for the brake and the left side for our gear shift. Quick shifter is connected to the gear shifter and it's working perfectly. We swapped out the head on this side because it was broken. And cool thing is, this piece is the same on the right and the left side, so it's interchangeable. I had an extra one on this brake lever that I just simply removed and swapped right over. We even have an extra one that's off the burnt lever that I can paint and use as a backup. Now, I'm pretty sure you can see our issue here. We've got some hoses touching the exhaust. I'm not sure if there's supposed to be a heat shield right here, but we definitely need to reroute these lines correctly. We're gonna also paint some brackets while we're at it. And you guessed it, off comes the tank once again. And now, for a quick break, we've got a special package. Let's open it up. This is my sister's room. We got her a gift. We got her a rowing machine. She's actually a professional rower. Am I doing this right? This is the Yeso roller. Yeso roller? Got a Bluetooth speaker on the bottom. And we got our data right in front of us. Plus, while you're rowing, it's got screen casting. So I can connect my phone, watch YouTube, Netflix, you know. My siblings don't watch CJ Media anyway. She watches a lot of Netflix, so this is gonna be perfect. And did I mention she's a professional rower? Yeah, this is the perfect gift. All right, back to the shop. We are getting so close. Carbon arrived from the factory in Italy and we installed it on both sides. It covers this section of the tank. It's a completely dry carbon piece, which flows right into the complete carbon piece that's half painted, half dry carbon. All we are missing for fairings is this front appendix piece, which comes right down here and then has an opening and some mesh for the air intake. Bolts in here, here, slots in there, and then bolts into here. Those pieces are Nürburgring specific, so who knows how long it will take. Plus, the right side appendix piece has the limited edition number on it, so I'm curious to see what mine says. We successfully rerouted the underslung caliper and the rear master cylinder brake lines on this right side, along with the reservoir hose and the pressure switch for the rear brake. We have a little bit of clearance next to the exhaust, but I found online there's actually a cover for this race exhaust. Couldn't find that cover separate unless you bought the whole system. And also, this muffler piece looks different in the pictures than the one I have. It has like tabs on top of this titanium. Moving to the front, we got a little bit of an aftermarket carbon piece up here, which actually flows in really well, covering the backside of the dash. Believe it or not, we are still waiting on a bunch of components from Italy to finish this Brutale up, even though it does look spectacular. Hearing this run for the first time was just amazing, and I can only dream of a first ride that will be just around the corner. That's gonna be all for tonight, guys. We will catch you in the next one. See ya.